There's no way to sugarcoat this. This sucks. Just like with the passing of fellow legends in the horror community, like Wes Craven and George Romero, Stuart Gordon's passing is definitely going to leave a hole in our hearts. But we really need to take solace in the fact that they will forever live on through their films and through their legacies, and they will never truly die. In Stuart's case, he will always be reanimated. He'll never truly die as long as we cherish his memory and we remember and appreciate his work. And I think as a community, we're definitely going to do that. That being said, I decided to make this video because I wanted to provide a wake of sorts for Stuart Gordon, for the man and his career, and the multitude of films that he was responsible for, whether it was directing or writing, which is a very underrated aspect of his career. So, in order for me to deal with this and for me to move on the best I can, let's all remember together Stuart Gordon. So, Stuart Gordon started out his career with a television movie. It was actually it was a TV presentation of a taped play. I believe that he was a part of, called Bleacher Bums in 1979. It wasn't until a few years later that he would direct his first film, Re-Animator, in 1985. And Re-Animator was a huge critical and not necessarily box office hit when it came out, but it did make a little bit of a profit. But he immediately made his mark with Re-Animator. That's the first film that I saw directed by Stuart Gordon. I personally feel Re-Animator is a classic, just like many other horror fans do. I definitely feel it still holds up really well. And I honestly feel Re-Animator is one of the best horror comedies out there. And just features a lot of great things to marvel at, from the practical makeup effects to the performances by some of the actors, like the always enjoyable and talented Jeffrey Combs, as well as I believe Ed Gale. So yeah, it's a really fun mix of horror and comedy, inspired by stories by H.P. Lovecraft. And just one hell of a directorial debut for Stuart Gordon. He would then follow it up with From Beyond in 1986, which was another film that was loosely based on a story by H.P. Lovecraft. Another one that I also enjoy. I would say I don't like From Beyond as much as Re-Animator, but it's still a film that I really had a good time with. It features, once again, some really impressive practical effects for a low budget, equally as impressive direction by Stuart Gordon, and another wacky, just great performance by Jeffrey Combs. It bit his head off like a gingerbread man. I just really, it's a really enjoyable one. And then after that, in 1987, he did Dolls, which is honestly one of his most underrated films. I've always liked Dolls. I think it's effectively creepy. It goes by at a good pace. In terms of the cast, it's not quite as strong as some of the casts in From Beyond or Re-Animator or some of Stewart's other work, but it's still a decent enough cast. It also features some really memorable sequences, like, for instance, the scene with the girl who has her eyes in her hands and puts them up to her face, and just a really gruesome concept of how people are turned into these uh, dolls. It was just a really nice film in terms of the tone, in terms of the structure. Another film that Stuart Gordon did that realized that the source material, well, not just the source material, but the subject material was not something to be taken too seriously. So that lended itself to a much more enjoyable time. Uh, really solid horror effort by Stuart Gordon, and definitely one of the more underrated horror films of the 1980s. After that, he actually did something way out of left field. He did a kid safety video for triaminic cough medicine and for kids called Kid Safe, the video. And it's actually on YouTube, and it is such a trip. I mean, the 80s were such a weird and awesome time because you have things like a kid safety video directed by Stuart Gordon, who did Re-Animator, From Beyond, and Dolls before he did this kid safety video. He also wrote the kid safety video, he produced Kid Safe the video, and he probably was the one that was behind getting a lot of the cast members involved for the video. It has two SCCTV uh, alumni in Andrea Martin and Joe Flaherty. Joe Flaherty reprises his role as Count Floyd in the opening and ending sequences. And Andrea Martin plays the kid in the Kid Safe video. You also have Meshack Taylor, who was in Mannequin. He's in this as a fireman. And you have the same guy, the actor who played Duffy in RoboCop 2, Stephen Lee. He plays a police officer in this. And he's not a dirty cop this time around. Um, and if that isn't crazy enough, you have an appearance by Greg Kinnear, the makeup effects artist, as one of the monsters that you see at the end of the video. And on top of that, you actually have an unofficial appearance by Jason Voorhees. It's a guy in a Jason Voorhees costume. And so he's got the hockey mask and everything. So thanks to Kid Safe the video, there is actual proof that Stuart Gordon at one point in time directed a scene with Jason Voorhees. But yeah, I mean, this video is such an oddity, and I do recommend checking it out sometime because it was just so crazy. Uh, and if you looked at the VHS cover art for this, you would never in a million years think that this is a film that's directed by Stuart Gordon and features appearances by the Mummy, a werewolf, a space alien, uh, and Jason Voorhees. But that just shows you how versatile of a filmmaker that Stuart was. And honestly, this kid safety video is well done. It's well directed. You can tell that Stuart Gordon actually put effort into directing this kid safety video. He could have just half-assed it, but he didn't, because I think he genuinely had a lot of compassion for the project. After that, he was the writer of Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. At least one of the writers. He helped create the story, and then Ed Naha and Tom Schulman came in and tweaked it up a little bit. But yeah, Stuart Gordon was actually involved at some capacity with Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. And then after that, he did Robot Jocks, which I haven't seen in years. I don't remember it honestly being one of my favorite Stuart Gordon films. Definitely one of the films that he has done that I'm not too fond of, but I can have some fun with. The main things I remember are the stop motion robot effects and the one scene with this one guy where I think it's the main guy, Achilles, where he's like, I'm gonna get in this thing and I'm gonna kick your ass. It's just the way that he delivered the line just stuck with me. I'm gonna get in this thing and I'm gonna kick your ass. Um, but yeah, Stuart Gordon also, I believe he also wrote that film too. Another example of how Stuart was a very versatile filmmaker, because that was definitely not a horror film. It was a sci-fi action movie. He also, around the same time in 1990, did a TV movie called Daughter of Darkness, which had Mia Sara in it. I haven't seen that, so I can't really say much about it. Then, after Robot Jox and Daughter of Darkness, he directed The Pit and the Pendulum. I believe it was a full moon film. That's another one I haven't seen yet either. I've heard some decent, okay things about it. I've heard that it's one of the better adaptations of the story, uh, but I haven't seen the film. Then in 1992, he did Fortress, which is one of my favorites that he's done, and I really do hope that it gets a new release on Blu-ray from one of these more well-known Blu-ray companies, because it does deserve, in my opinion, more exposure. It's one of Christopher Lambert's best roles. It's got some really gonzo, crazy stuff in it. It's got some good effects. It's a enjoyable, entertaining sci-fi action romp. I've always enjoyed Fortress. Um, Reminds me, I do need to get my hands on the Blu-ray. I believe there's a Blu-ray overseas, but I would like to see a new release. You can't really get interviews with Stewart, sadly, because he's no longer with us. But it would still be nice to get a new release from Synapse or Shout Factory or Second Sight or uh, Vinegar Syndrome probably won't do it, but I believe the DVD was released through Artisan, so I'm wondering if maybe Vestron Collector Series, maybe they might have Fortress. Either way, it would be nice to see a new release for the film, so more people can check it out. He also was one of the writers on the Body Snatchers remake in 1993, which I have always felt is underrated and overlooked. Um, he then was the writer and director of another full moon horror film in Castle Freak. And I haven't seen that in a while. I remember that being okay. I remember not liking the ending, but it's been such a long time since I've seen the film that I can't really say for sure what my full opinions of it are right now. But I remember it being an okay horror film. Had some definitely had its moments. He also was one of the writers on The Dentist with Corbin Burnson, and then he was at the helm of Space Truckers, which he wrote, produced, and directed in 1996. I really enjoy Space Truckers. I think Space Truckers, along with Dolls, is one of his most underrated films. I don't think enough people really talk about Space Truckers. I think more people talk about Fortress, and more people actually talk about Dolls than they do about Space Truckers. I mean, Space Truckers has got a fun cast with Dennis Hopper. I think it's Steven Dorff. I could be wrong though. I think Debbie Mazar is in it. It's got some really fun, quirky stuff in it. It's definitely a tongue-in-cheek sci-fi action flick, but it's got some genuine creative moments in it that definitely show how talented and how capable Stuart Gordon was of writing unique screenplays with unique concepts and aspects to them. Uh, yeah, it's one I definitely do recommend people giving a look, because it's one of those movies that is honestly kind of forgotten about, kind of, and critics weren't really too fond of it either. So I think that was part of it as well. He then did a film called The Wonderful Ice Cream Suit, which I've never seen. I keep this is probably one of the films that he's done that most people completely forget that he directed. Like, I had no idea he did this. It's got Joe Mantegna, Asai Morales, Edward James Olmos. It's a comedy. It was originally, I think, supposed to be released for a theatrical distribution, but the company, I guess, didn't think it was going to do that well. I think it was Hollywood Pictures, and so it was released direct to video. I'm mostly kind of curious about checking that out. Apparently, it's a fantasy film. It's a fantasy comedy. That's one I'm actually curious about checking out for the cast and just to see how Stuart Gordon handles this particular genre of comedy fantasy. Then he was one of the writers for Progeny. I remember not being super big on that one. I think he also produced it. I think that one was directed by Brian Yuzna. Then he did Dagon, which I haven't seen all the way through. I've seen some clips of it, and I remember liking the makeup effects. And I like some of the characters, but I haven't actually seen the whole film. I have it on Blu-ray though. I definitely want to give that a watch sometime in the near future. And that's my plan. I am planning after I kind of get done with some of the stuff that I have on my list already. I'm planning on doing a marathon of Stuart Gordon films in his honor because I just feel like he deserves it, just like any of the other filmmakers that I've done little mini marathons on to honor them, like Wes Craven and George Romero. So I definitely want to do that for Stuart. I'm probably going to limit it to certain titles. I don't want to do everything. Um, it just depends. I mean, maybe I might do everything because it's not like I'm gonna have a lack of time to be able to watch and do reviews of all of his films, at least the ones that I'm the most curious about. Um, but I will definitely be doing a review of Re-Animator, From Beyond, Dolls, Robot Jocks, Fortress, Castle Freak, Space Truckers, Dagon, and I'm also thinking I'll do Daughter of Darkness, the 1990 film, the TV movie, and then maybe King of the Ants, because that's the one that he did after Dagon, King of the Ants. He was also the producer of that. King of the Ants looks like an interesting film to me. It looks like it has might have some promising performances and a little bit out of Stewart's comfort zone. I mean, not so much like something like The Wonderful Ice Cream Suit, which I might add to the list just because, why not? I mean, at this point, if I'm going to add that, I might as well just go all the way. I guess I'm just gonna let it out. The plan is to do all of them because why not? But just keep in mind, I might take little breaks in between so I don't get burned out because I definitely don't want to do that with Stewart, especially not right now. So we got King of the Ants. That's the next film that he did. I haven't seen it, but I've seen the trailer. It looks interesting. And then he did some film called Edmund. It's a drama. William H. Macy was in it. Joe Mantegna again. Denise Richards. Julia Stiles. Never heard of this. It's a drama. I like William H. Macy. Apparently, it's based on a play by David Mamet. Yeah, because Stewart was actually a really big fan and connoisseur of plays. In fact, after he stopped doing films, after he did Edmund and Stuck in 2007, he exclusively was doing stage plays. He did Re-Animator the musical. He did Nevermore, An Evening with Edgar Allan Poe, and Taste. So that was what he devoted his career to after he was done with filmmaking. It was something he was very passionate about and something that he genuinely enjoyed and loved. And I'm really glad that he got the opportunity to do that before he passed away. He got to embrace his love for stage plays once again when he was still capable of doing so. So it wasn't one of those missed opportunities for him. But yeah, I know a lot of you have probably seen more of his filmography than maybe I have, but I still wanted to do this video because Stuart Gordon is a spectacular director. He did a lot of classic cult horror films, and he also, from all intents and purposes, from what I've heard about him, he seemed like he was a really nice guy, and he was definitely someone that appreciated the fact that he was appreciated by his fans. And I definitely think it's time that we repay the favor, that we continue to appreciate Stewart, uh, and never forget him. And I don't think we will, because he means a lot to us, a lot to those of us in this community, and he's brought so much joy and scares and intrigue to our minds and our imaginations that he's going to be forever valuable. So, rest in peace, Stuart. Like I said earlier in this video, you'll be forever reanimated.